Should the West give Mikhail Gorbachev the billions he wants to bail out a crumbling communist empire? The people of Lithuania, under the Soviet boot for more than 50 years, don't think so.
By no means. The money will be used to prolong the communist regime.
Roger Robinson, former chief economist at the U.S. National Security Council, says Gorbachev and the Soviets are not creditworthy.
Indeed, it's not a particular surprise that many Western bankers refer to the Soviet Union now as the Red Bear S&L.
Robinson says, like the S&L crisis, taxpayers will be required to pay the bill if the Soviets don't repay their debts. The USSR is already 6 months late in paying between $6 and $10 billion due Western suppliers. Many Soviets say a large infusion of Western cash will not improve their standard of living. It will only further government bureaucracy and corruption. And the Soviet economy appears to be getting worse. Sure, Soviets have grown accustomed to long lines during recent years, lines for gasoline, beer and vodka, and just about everything in great demand. But their rubles are now buying less and less, and fewer items are available. On this day in Moscow, consumers hoarded bottles of ketchup, a common commodity in the U.S., but a scarcity in the USSR. Soviet shoppers find grocery store freezers nearly empty and are often left to select less than desirable frozen dinners. The average Soviet earns about 300 rubles, or approximately $10 per month. A sweater, shirt, or blouse can easily cost the buyer more than half his monthly salary. Many Muscovites complain about crowded living conditions. 3 families share this small 2-bedroom flat. A housing shortage in Moscow means this man will wait for years to get his own apartment. A change in Soviet law now allows him to buy his own flat, but Stas Fedotov says he does not earn enough money to afford one.
Можно, конечно, купить.
Of course you can buy a flat, but the price is so high, at least we understand it to be fantastically high, and we can't get that much money.
And prices for just about everything are expected to go up in the near future. The G7 nations meeting this week in London project an inflation rate of more than 100% for the Soviet Union in 1991. The chairman for economic reform in the Russian city of Leningrad, Sergei Vasilyev, predicts a dismal future.
I think there will be a long period of illness with hyperinflation.
Vasilyev says he does not see an end to the continuing Soviet economic decline. He blames the Kremlin for resisting reform.
Our government doesn't want to implement really radical change in the sphere of economy because its power basis is in the former structures. It is the so-called military-industrial complex.
Some Soviets and many reformers say there is just one way out from their dismal lifestyles. That's free markets and private enterprise. And here in the city of Leningrad, they're leading the way. Within the next 2 years, many of these businesses will be privately owned. But the Soviet central government has been slow to move toward free markets and private ownership of property. In recent years, reform was limited to government joint ventures with Western firms like McDonald's, Baskin-Robbins, and others. But an agreement reached between Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev and Russian Federation President Boris Yeltsin this spring allows Russian cities like Leningrad to chart their own economic course. Limited private ownership is being attempted in Moscow. Olga Bakanova shares ownership of this vegetable and fruit store with the government. She says when the state had full ownership of the store, she was forced to sell products of poor quality. But now?
Of course the quality is much higher than it was before because we select the products ourselves. And of course we try to select the best products.
Olga says earnings per month have more than tripled because she is permitted to buy products directly from farmers. Perhaps Mikhail Gorbachev will cite examples like Olga Bakanova's fruit and vegetable store when he attempts to convince the Western leaders to grant his country billions of dollars in loans and credits. The U.S. Congress says Gorbachev must establish free markets and private ownership of property before he gets 1 cent from Washington.